Now, all across Nigeria, the drums are beating prolifically loud, either in support or against President Tinubu's declaration of a state of emergency in Rivers State. It's clearly rousing passions, and for many it spells out a doomsday scenario. They speak of the president's move as unconstitutional, a frightful danger that might rend the country's democracy to pieces and lead to unintended consequences. Others see the president's move as perfectly legal, insisting that he acted well within his constitutional rights and in good time to prevent a potential return to the days when militants held sway in the region. Well, whichever side you're on, one thing is clear: the president's declaration can only be ratified or overturned by the National Assembly. And today it went before the lawmakers, who must pass it in both houses by a 2/3 majority. So, can the president's supporters muster that kind of support in an assembly where the ruling APC holds a tiny sliver of a majority? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio here in Abuja by Honorable Obi Aguocha, who is a member of the House of Representatives under the Labour Party. And from Lagos, I'm also joined by Professor Konyinsola Ajayi, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let me come to you first, Professor, in Lagos. From a legal perspective, do you fault the action the president has taken?
Good evening. This is, quite an emotive issue. And as you, said in your introduction, it has, elicited a lot of reaction from the public. And most of it, very emotional and against what the president has done. But I think the simple answer is whether the president had any basis in law to do what he did. And I think the answer lies in what everybody refers to, which is Section 305 of the Constitution, which allows him to declare a state of emergency. So no one is disputing that. And that section then doesn't say what happens during a state of emergency, what measures he should take. The only case that has spoken to that section in Nigeria today is the case of Plateau State against the federal government of Nigeria, a case involving Governor Ajayi when he was suspended from office by the proclamation of President Obasanjo at the time. And the case went direct to the Supreme Court, and was a full panel of 7 senior judges, including the Chief Justice of the Federation at that time. And they were unanimous in their decision that Governor Ajayi, was lawfully suspended and didn't have any power, and that the person who had control over all the agencies of the state was the administrator appointed by General Obasanjo. And so I think that puts this to rest. That, yes, fortunately, unfortunately, our president has a leg to stand on in doing what he did as a matter of pure law.
Okay, well, thanks for setting that out. Clearly, there is some dispute about that, because other sort of legal luminaries like yourself have taken opposite positions. But let me come to you, Honorable Obi Aguocha. Thank you for your patience. You are, of course, a member of the House of Representatives, and one would assume that you have considerable familiarity with the Nigerian Constitution, especially in the current circumstances of the House having to debate the issue of the imposition of a state of emergency. Is there anywhere in the Constitution where it says that the president can remove the governor, his deputy, and the State Assembly, all of them elected officials?
Well, let me also help the senior advocate of Nigeria. In the case between AG Federation and AG Lagos in 2013, the Supreme Court also held that consistently with the decision in Plateau, that under no circumstances shall the democratic structures of a state be dissolved or removed, even in a state of emergency. And then by going again to Section 305, states equivocally the conditions that would arise that would warrant a state of emergency. Now, under those circumstances, the president is right to declare a state of emergencies, but he falls short to have the right to dissolve an elected governor, a deputy, and members of the House of Assembly. So Section 305 does not give him, in my view, I'm not a lawyer, but in my view, as a common sense legislator.
You're going to vote on it, so what you say is rather important, isn't it?
So as a common sense legislator, I don't think Section 305 gives the president that mandate to go beyond the declaration of a state of emergency. Section 188 of the Constitution stipulates the manners in which a governor or a deputy governor, in this case, Governor Fubara and his deputy, can be removed from office through an impeachment process or death. And
okay.
Yes.
Mr. Ajayi, just to, I mean, I know you made your points very clear at the outset, and they're absolutely clear. Nevertheless, I wonder if you consider, having heard the honourable member of the House of Representatives, Aguocha, and also some of your contemporaries, like, Femi Falana and all the rest of them. I mean, is there a grey area in all of this, or is it pretty stark as far as you're concerned?
Okay, so a lot of people speak about section, or the Constitution that talks about how governors or members of the House can be removed. But the governor hasn't been removed. That's the point. And so I think they shouldn't make any mistake about that. Now, section 45 of the Constitution, which is similar to section 65 of the 1960 Constitution, provides that the National Assembly, for instance, can make laws in derogation of our fundamental human rights. Okay? So there is no place for an absolute statement that the president couldn't have done what he did. Yes, there is a gray area, and this is where the gray area is. The Supreme Court case that I referred to did not decide the case on its merits, did not go into the case in full. What happened, and I didn't just want to get into legal technicalities, is that when the case was instituted in the Supreme Court, the federal government just simply said that the administrator is the only person that has control over the state and is the only one that can give instructions to sue. And therefore, that the action instituted at the instance of the Attorney General and the Speaker of the House of Assembly was incompetent. And, 6 of the 7 judges were clear in unmistakable terms that the suspension holds. Dariye could not give instructions, and the only person that could give instruction was the administrator. And, Justice Ways, the CJN, was very clear. He says, in the light of the provisions of Section 305, Dariye could not act at all. So it's clear. Now, the point that can be made is this, that if probably Fubara sues at the Federal High Court, the case can be made that the case should be looked at as a whole, and the court may come to a different conclusion in the matter. And, well, Supreme Court may reverse itself. But if it doesn't reverse itself, the reference that I was made to the 2013 case and a 2024 case is that nobody can remove or dissolve legislative bodies. You'll find cases that say that members of the House or the Senate could not remove their colleagues. And so that's true. So the point here, and what is important to underscore, is that there's been no removal of the governor or removal of members of the House. They've been suspended. Now, I agree. I mean, this is very political. The manner and the circumstances in which all this happens definitely muddies the waters and is very upsetting to a lot of people. But the important point is this, which the public must know. This happened in 1962 when the premier of Western Region was removed, and he went to court, and quite a number of cases. And one of them, Williams and Majekudumi, famous FRA Williams. The Supreme Court said that when it comes to matters of emergency, the courts are very careful to query what the president has done. And they refer to cases of similar nature in Malaysia, in England, and other countries like India, where they all said that, these are matters that are within the preserve of the president. And the reason, I guess, is because questions as to public safety, public order, calamity, are not necessarily objective questions that the court can determine.
Right. Okay.
So,
well, thank you for that. And
we cannot say yet.
Right. Honorable Aguocha, let me bring you in. I'm sorry you had to wait, but I mean, that was an important explanation. I wonder what your take is on this, because I mean, some people in your House of Representatives, I mean, are so miffed by this. It's a very, as he said, a very emotional thing. I mean, some are saying that the action the president took yesterday was so egregious that it warrants the National Assembly beginning a process of impeachment against him. I mean, is that something that is kind of doing the rounds there?
Well, let me just try to put, some clarification to what the Leonard Sek just said. Whether he's using the word removal or suspension, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, people have been moved from...
You have removed the mandate of a democratically elected governor of a state. Whether it's for 1 day or whether it's for 6 months, you have removed that person from exercising the fundamental rights enshrined in our Constitution for him to be the administrative leader of
Rivers State.
And
you've arrogated to yourself the power to do
powers
that
you do not have.
Right.
And just like my members are saying, if you look at the president's speech yesterday, the president even went beyond to say that the sole administrator shall not make new laws, but the functions of the sole administrator must be approved by the Federal Executive Council.
Well, he did say that he could make regulations.
Yeah, regulations must be approved by the Federal Executive Council. That, again, negates the constitutional authority of the National Assembly. Section 11 of the Constitution talks about where a State House of Assembly can no longer function for whatever reason, that the National Assembly shall take over those functions. Now, the president has usurped the functions of the National Assembly and so also arrogated those functions to himself. So I do not blame my colleagues for saying that the actions of the president warrants a gross misconduct. And if it leads to impeachment, why not? We must have to adhere strictly to what the Constitution of the Federal Republic says.
Right. Okay, well, we're fast sort of running out of time. Professor Ajayi, if the decision to declare a state of emergency is ratified by the National Assembly, is there any option left for those who want to challenge this move? Can they, for instance, approach the Supreme Court for interpretation?
Certainly. But the important point is this. I think it should be corrected. The president actually said administration cannot make laws. He didn't usurp the powers of the National Assembly. Section 11, as Honorable Member said, is clear. They would make laws. But the important point, I think, is this. Look, this is very, very simple. The proclamation of the president effectively is only for 48 hours. The National Assembly has all the powers. Once they vote tomorrow, as they say they will, and throw it out, that's the end of the matter. Fubara goes back to office, the House goes back to its seating. So this is actually, if it's anything, an aberration of just 48 hours. So the first thing is, I don't think the members of the House should be so upset because they have all the powers to stop the president in his tracks. They could have done that today and ended all this. But having said so, if they approve what the president did, yes, Fubara can go back to court. But going back the cases that have been decided, I think his option is to go to the Federal High Court and not the Supreme Court, because an individual has no right to approach the Supreme Court.
Right. Okay. Well, Honorable Aguocha, you were raising a point there.
No, I was raising a point. If the president was sincere in the proclamation and working with the National Assembly, not usurping the powers of the National Assembly, he shouldn't have gone today to swear in the sole administrator without the concurrence of the National Assembly. So when members say the president is usurping the powers of the National Assembly, there's merit to the things that they're saying. But this is a political crisis, and I also believe the president, within his mandate, has the sole authority to call all actors to this crisis and call them to order.
Well, let me ask you this.
Without any preference to one or the other.
Let me ask you this, Mr. Aguocha. I mean, let's talk the politics of it, because, I mean, you are in the National Assembly. Voting will take place, and somebody is going to the president is either going to win or not win. The ruling APC, of course, has a small sliver of a majority in both houses of the National Assembly. Do you think the opposition could tip the balance?
The Constitution stipulates 2/3 of the members, not 2/3 of members present in any sitting. 2/3 of members, 2/3 of 360, which is, I think, about 273 or 274. As of today, that I sit here to talk, the president does not have the numbers.
Right. Okay. Let me come to you, Professor Ajayi. Going along the lines of what you were saying earlier, the Attorney General of Nigeria, who I am assuming advised the president before he went and delivered that speech yesterday, he's been justifying, the Attorney General, the imposition of a state of emergency on Rivers State. I wonder if you've heard his points and whether they ticked any boxes for you, because, I mean, he was essentially relying on that section 305 of the Nigerian Constitution.
Well, that's all he can rely on, really. I totally agree with the honourable member and many, members of the public that have expressed, dismay about the exercise of this power. And I think it's legitimate to do so. But what I don't know, and many of us do not know, is the security report that the president had. And so that's why, we have to be very careful. When President Jonathan exercised this power, he did not suspend anyone from office. And he did that in his entire discretion. Now, when Ajayi was removed, the House and the National Assembly actually amended the proclamation by Obasanjo. So we're not out, we're not helpless. The representatives of the people are actually the only ones that can act fully on an emergency. The president can only take the first step, which is what he's done. The full power resides in the National Assembly, and we should look to them. We should look to the honorable member to really support, to ensure that the vote is defeated. And if that happens, all this would end, honestly, and it should be academic. And so, coming back to the Attorney General, I do not necessarily agree with everything he said. I believe, as you pointed out, Mr. Anaugolu, that there are gray areas, and the case can be argued that the president acted wrongly. But the question which you asked is, does the president have a leg to stand on? I believe he does, on the basis of the decision of the full panel in that case.
Okay, thank you for that. Honorable Aguocha, I wonder if in the course of the debates and the discussion in the House of Representatives, I mean, do you allow sort of legal experts to come in and give interpretations to the Constitution?
Well, First of all, like I said, the president, if he says he has communicated the National Assembly, we are yet to be read the presidential communication.
Right.
So
You haven't
I have to be a bit
received the gazetted
yep.
sort of.
He said he's been gazetted.
Right.
But we are yet to receive it at the National Assembly. I believe tomorrow, because he has 48 hours from the proclamation to having the concurrence of the National Assembly. If it comes up tomorrow in the National Assembly, it's very high majority of the National Assembly are lawyers. Like I said, I'm not a lawyer. So we'll have opportunities tomorrow, probably, where all sides of the legal divide on this issue, most of us who are not lawyers will sit back and listen to the argument and then hopefully come up with common sense solutions that will help to move us away from this.
But there is a strong political element to this. And I'm wondering, because I mean, we're hearing all kinds of reports floating around suggesting that there are moves being made on members of the National Assembly to get them to vote one way or another. And I'm not just talking about, people approaching their colleagues to say, hey, can you vote with me or against me?
Charles, let me help
you. But there's a lot more going on.
No, I don't think so. The essence, I can speak proud of my colleagues, their integrity and their ability to look at all issues from, whether political perspective, constitutional perspective, or otherwise minded. There are discussions ongoing, of course. I wouldn't say that are none. The discussions ongoing up until the point that we sit for plenary tomorrow. But what I have seen and have heard from my colleagues is that most of them are looking at this thing objectively so that we don't set bad precedents, not just for this president, for future presidents, where state of emergencies will now be used as a political tool to intimidate opposition. So we're looking at that objectively. But hopefully tomorrow everybody is entitled to vote their conscience without being induced or without being coerced. But I believe that my members are equal to the task. Now, whether we will get the two-third majority, which is 273, still leaves a lot of questions to be answered today.
Right. Okay. I suppose I'll come to you, Professor Ajayi, for a final word, because we're literally down to 1 minute, about where you see things going now from a legal point of view.
Okay. So what I hope is that honorable member and people like him don't seek 2/3 of the vote. They should seek 1/3. That's all. Or they should filibuster the resolution. The law, the constitution is clear. If nothing happens by close of business tomorrow, all this is over. The president must get a resolution of 2/3 for it to survive. It's automatic. So if the House does not seat, or want the seat and they just rally 1/3 of the members, this is over.
Okay.
So it's actually simpler than is made out.
Okay. On that note, I want to thank you very much indeed. Professor Konyinsola Ajayi is a senior advocate of Nigeria. He was talking to me from Lagos. And of course, Honorable Obi Aguocha is a member of the House of Representatives under the Labour Party, and he was with me here in the studio in Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.